good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all. It's always a great to speak in global events, and I'm honored to be here. I hope that everyone had a great time so far. Let's remember our goal and give it a final push. After my session, you are welcome to make your donation to the course using the QR code in this slide. This session is all about Bacpac, not about the theory, but only the internals level, nice tweaks and advanced tips. Before I start the session, I want to show you a short illustration. It will give some time to those who join us a bit late, and it will be a nice trigger to understand why you should be here in the next 55 minutes. For the sake of the demo, I created a new virtual machine and I installed several instances of SQL Server on premises. In addition, I will use Azure SQL Database as needed. This basically illustrates different environments, and we will discuss today how we can copy a database from one environment to the other. So let's start with the SQL Server 2019. Let's start with confirming that we are connected to the right server. And I will create now a new database with a very simple table. Our goal is to create a copy of the database in a different environment. So first of all, I will take a look of using the simple backup and restore. Let's back up the database at this time. Very fast, it's a very small database. And I will create a copy of the backup file into a different environment. Okay, we are using the same machine, but let's illustrate it. I copy the backup file here, and now I can go to the new environment and restore the database. Okay. I assume that this is an expected result to everyone. We get errors since the version of the backup file was created in 2019. There is no forward compatibility, and it is not compatible with this server, which is older version 2016. We need to understand that backup is internal process which provide a disaster recovery solution. This means that backup should provide solution to restore the system exactly at the time that it was created, in specific point in time. It is not solving our need to copy the database between different environments. So let's go and try to use a Bacpac file. I will go back to the original environment. We have the database that we created. Let's do it fast. You can notice that the Bacpac is created in steps, starting from exporting the database, then the schema, then exporting the data and processing the tables. This is very important to remember this point. Let's go and make the copy in our 2016 environment. Again, you can notice that the import of the Bacpac file is executed in step. First of all, the database is created, then the schema, import data, and create indexes. And this is the power of the Bacpac file. Bacpac is the main tool to create copy of database on a different environment. It is used, for example, to create copy between Azure SQL Database and on-premises SQL Server, and vice versa. Okay, let's do one more demo with a database that it's a bit more complex. Again, I will connect to the source environment, which is the SQL Server 2019. And this time I will create a database which include several tables, which are using a feature that's called graph. This is a feature that was added in SQL Server 2017. Let me copy the script. It's a bit long. Okay. So what we have here, first of all, let's confirm that we are in the right place. Yes. I create a new database and I create a simple table like before. I will call it A1. I add some data. I create exactly the same table structure, but this time I called it T1. It's very important. And I insert the same data. Then I create some tables which are related to the graph features. And obviously here we hope not to get errors at the beginning. Okay. I will skip the test to backup the database and restore in the SQL Server 2016 because we already know that this will not work. Let's go straight to create a Bacpac of the new database. So this is our new database. And this is our Bacpac file. Next. Again, it's a very small database. You can see that it should be very fast to create the Bacpac. And you can see the steps like before. Same procedure, I will go to the SQL Server 2016 and I will try to create the new database. The database is small, it's created in steps, and you can expect, oops, we have errors. We will dive into the errors further in the session, but if you are fast enough, then you can notice that we only get error about single entity only one error. This is one of the node tables which are not supported in SQL Server 2016. At this point, if you will go to get support at Microsoft channels or in the forums, then the solution which you will probably get is to create a copy of the live database in the old environment, remove all the problematic entities which are not supported in the new environment. For example, remove all the graph tables, and then you can create a new Bacpac file which will be supported. This is awful solution. Think about this. This means that you will lose all the data of the graph tables. You will lose the tables that related to the feature that is not supported, but the tables are supported. More than this, once you will do this, then you will get the next error about the next entity or feature that is not supported. You can go back and forward and remove another entity which is not supported, create another Bacpac or another copy of the database, and eventually you will succeed to create a Bacpac which is very poor without all the problematic entities. By the way, I want to show you one more thing that will help us understand. Notice that the database was created. More than this, we can see that one of the table named A1 was created okay, but for some reason, table that named T1, the same table structure, was not created. Okay, we can go to the presentation. As we can see in the demo, database backup file cannot provide the same support as Bacpac file when we need to move between different environments. Database backup and restore is internal process of the SQL server, and it works in database level. Bacpac file is totally different. Bacpac file includes the information about the schema and the data. The file is created using external tool and not by the SQL server. The tool communicates with the server using simple queries like any external application. The tool checks what is the schema of the database, and it works on an entity level, one by one, execute queries. This means that the data might not be consistent across tables. For example, if transactions execute during the time that we create the Bacpac file, then the data might not be consistent between tables. So what is the goal of the Bacpac file? Simply to include all the information in the Bacpac tool, to include all the information in the Bacpac file about how to create a new database which have the same structure and data. It is not a backup. More than this, this is certainly not a disaster recovery solution. The solution that the reason that this is so powerful, it's exactly because it executes the task with steps, one query after the other. If there is an incompatibility issue during the execution in specific query, then the tool simply stop. It failed, but we already got all the entities which it succeeded to build. This means that part of the entities might be created in the new database. What we can do with this information? Okay, think about how useful it can be if we could edit the Bacpac file directly and fix the information inside the file after the file was created. In fact, this is the trigger why you should not sleep during the next 30 minutes while I will teach about the internals of the Bacpac file and how we can edit it manually. And this is not the only things, because in addition to fixing the files, I will provide some more tips to improve performance. Okay, I think that this is a good time to present myself. My name is Ronen Arieli. I'm a senior consultant and architect. I work in the field of application development and data platform. My main focus is on designing enterprise level platforms and thinking outside the box. I really love to dig into the internals. This means to examine the undocumented level of the product and implement it for practical uses, like improving performance. Are there any questions before we dive into the Bacpac internals? I cannot see the questions. You will need.
I don't see any new questions.
Okay, so we can continue and dive into the internals.
Yes, sir.
To learn about the Bacpac file, I will use one of the Bacpac file which I already created. Let's go to the live environment, a virtual machine, and we will use this Bacpac file. The magic point in understanding the internals of the Bacpac file is very simple. You only need to know that Bacpac file is a zip file. This is simply a different extension. Check what I'm going to do now. I'm only going to change the extension of the file name. I will call it now zip. And you can see that this is a simple zip file. I can go inside it. Let's uncompress it, so we will be able to actually work with it and edit the content. Okay, in the main folder, you can see that we have 4 XML files. I will use Notepad++ in order to examine the files. And we have a small plugin that can help us read the file. Okay, starting with the first file, content types. As the name implies, this file includes the information about which types of content we have in the package. For example, in this package, we have XML. We know those are the 4 files I just opened. We have BCP. Those files include the actual data of the tables. It is hidden here in the folder data. And we have another type which is called waves. It is hidden here in the folder. This information about what types we have in the file is very important since other packages are using the same mechanism. For example, Bacpac. To clarify, we are working today about back with a B. But there is another type of a package which is called DAC. Let's create a DAC of the same database so we will be able to compare. Okay. We are going back to 2019, and this time I will create a DAC. You can notice that when I create a Bacpac, we have some different options. For example, we have the option to configure the name of the application. We can configure the version. I can change the version and manage versioning, and I can add some description. Let me add something just that we will be able to find it in the internal. And let's create it in a different location. Next, next, it's very fast. There are no steps, there is only one step, as you can see. You can see that it was created in a second, and now we can go and examine it. Okay, so we are in the same place, and this is the Bacpac. By the way, for some reason, Microsoft documentation about the Bacpac file explicitly explained that the Bacpac is a zip file, but I did not find any such documented information about the Bacpac file. So I'm telling you that the fact is that both of those files are simple zip file, and they have the same structure, as we will see right now. Let's uncompress it. And we can see this is the DAC information. We can see that we have the same 4 XML files. Let's open the content type to compare. You can notice that the Bacpac file include only XML, and this fit the content that we saw. So this is why this file is very important. Let's move to the next file, DAC Metadata. The DAC Metadata include the information about the version of the package that we use. It allows us to manage versioning, which is not relevant to Bacpac usually, but it is common task using Bacpac file. This is outside the scope of today's session, but if you did not know it until now, then you must know that we can manage versioning of our database using Bacpac packages and simple application, versioning application like GitHub. And the way that we will manage it is by using the versioning, and we will see now how it's look here. So when we are using a Bacpac, you remember that we had the option to insert what version we are using, and we have a description. So basically it's the same structure. Moving to the next file, its name, model. This is the main file, or some people will consider it as the main file. This file includes all the information about all the entities inside the database. We can see the information about the tables and the columns, for example. Why should we understand the content of this model file? Since we can edit it manually and avoid or fix errors related to using undocumented element in the Bacpac file. We can remove or edit specific problematic element. I will give you a simple tip. There is no reason to copy the database and recreate a Bacpac file after you remove everything in the database level. Instead, you can create a Bacpac file from the original database and you can remove the tables which are related, for example, in our case, to the graph features. And you can edit the information not only to remove the tables, but to fix the information. So we will continue to use the table, but as a simple table. Let's see how we can do it. I'm looking for the word node because I know that the feature that now block me related to the graph. And voila. This is the information about the table named fish larva. This is a node table, and you can see this line that includes the property is node. When the Bacpac tool creates the query and see this property, then it creates a query that uses the new features of the graph. All that I need to do is to remove this line. And I will go further inside. Those are the columns. And there is one column which is directly related to the graph feature. You can see, again, we have property that related to the new feature. We can remove this as well. So what we can do is actually fix the file and go and execute the import of the Bacpac file without any problem. I actually have another tip for you. This is something that I noticed by accident. You remember that when we imported the Bacpac file and we got error, the database was created and some of the entities also might be created. The process only stopped when it reached to the first error. So here is my trick. If this has happened for you, what you can do is to create a new Bacpac file from the new database, the one that includes only part of the entities. Next, using Notepad++ or other application, you can compare the new Bacpac file and the original Bacpac file. And by doing so, you can find exactly which entities are missing. You can go and fix the database or the original Bacpac files according to this. So this is just a useful tip. Okay, we need to continue and move to the last file that we have in the package. This is the origin file. This file includes the information about the environment of the database. For example, the server version, it includes some property of the package. You can see here the server version. You can see some statistic information. In some cases, using the Bacpac file, for example, in the Azure, when you get a failure in the process of importing, it is related to the fact that the tool that executes the query simply saw in the Bacpac file that we have a new version. So simply by edit this line, we might succeed to import the Bacpac file. For example, if I want to import it to a very old version like 2008, maybe by editing this information, the Bacpac file tool will succeed to work. What about the folders? We saw that we have 2 folders, so let's remember the folders that we have. We have this. Okay, the data folder. The data folder includes subfolders for each one of the tables. Inside the folders of the tables, we have BCP files. Those BCP files are exactly the same files which the server uses for replication, for example, and we can use them manually, directly. If you want, for example, to import the data to existing database. And the last one, that we have here is the folder wells. Inside the wells, we have a file which, for some reason, Microsoft did not add the file type extension. Do not ask me why. This is a simple XML file as well. We can open it. Let's change the extension. Again, we want to see it in pretty mode. Okay, so what is the wells? This is the relation. The wells files include the information about the mapping of the tables to the location of the data. So you can see that for each table, we have a target that tell you where is the actual BCP file. That's basically all that we have inside the internal of the Bacpac file. Once we finish to edit the file, fix whatever we want, we have a final step, which is to compress the folder back to zip file, change the name of the extension to Bacpac, and we can use it in the new environment. Let's see what is the time. Awesome, we are exactly on time. Let's see if there are any questions right now. Swami, can you check the questions?
No, not yet. I think we are good. You have more time to talk. No queries at this point.
I don't know if it's good, but okay. Questions usually are a sign that people did not go to sleep yet. But the other side of the equation, no question means that, hey, I explained it awesome, no question. Okay, think about question. You are welcome to ask. I will try to answer everything during the meeting. And if we will not have time, then I will give you my contact information and we will continue it after. There are many options to create a copy of the database. In this table, I only show few common options. Which I want to mention just by name. So we have an option pretty new, which is using Transact SQL. We can create a database copy. This only works between Azure SQL Database and Azure SQL Database. A is for Azure, L is for local on-premises. And this is basically create a full copy including data and schema. We already spoke about the Bacpac file. The Bacpac file we saw only include the XML. The Bacpac file include only the schema. It does not include the data, but it fit to any environment basically. Bacpac file, as you can see, we have full V in all options. Replication is another way that we can use in order to replicate only if we are involving a local database. So we can create a replication between local to local, between local to the Azure, and between the Azure to local. We cannot replicate from the Azure to local. We have the BCP option to import data. We have link server that we can use. We have Azure Data Sync, SQL Server Integrity. We have local SSMS. We have Azure SSIS. And in this slide, I show the information from Microsoft document. Microsoft presents some recommendations for the best practice in different scenarios. In the bottom table, I added my 2 cents regarding some more scenarios and using options which, for some reason, Microsoft did not mention, like the replication, Bacpac, the new Transact SQL, and linked server. troubleshooting tweak and tips. Okay, we will start from the most common error that we hear a lot, and this is the one that we spoke about. We try to use the Bacpac file and we get an error that related to a feature which is not supported in the new environment. For example, in the Azure SQL Database, there are a lot of features, not a lot, but there are features that are not supported, which might be supported in on-premises SQL Server. So what is the solution for the case that we get this error? Option 1, I already mentioned, create a copy of the database in the source environment, remove the unwanted, unsupported features, and create a new Bacpac file. This might fit for small databases. This might be very problematic if you actually need to remove 50% of your database tables. So we have option 2, which we presented today. Option 2 is to remove the problematic entities from the Bacpac file. Now, when I'm saying to remove it from the Bacpac, actually it's not a file now, we speak about a package. You need to do the next step. You need to remove the table from the model file. You need to remove the relation from the Rails files, and don't forget to remove the data itself from the data folder. In this case, we lose the table and the data related to the table. So this is basically sound like we get the same information like in option 1, but in this option, we can now do a second step. In the second step, you can create a table manually, simply create table query, and now you can take the BCP files from the Bacpac file and import the data to the new table. So this gives us option not to lose any information. Moreover, we have option 3. Option 3, which I mentioned, is to edit the information about the tables in the Bacpac file. We don't need to remove the table. We need to change the type of the table. We need to remove the feature node, for example. This is more advanced. But if you can do it, so we can simply create a better, a fixed Bacpac file, which we can use in the new environment. Don't forget to recompress the folder to zip file. And very important point, do not, okay, let me say it 3 times. Do not, remember, do not use the Windows zip tool in order to compress the folder. Why? If you will use the Windows default tool, by default configuration, the zip file that you will get will be larger than the original zip file that was created using the Bacpac tool. So don't use it, and I will give you another tip in this point, but let's wait and go about several scenarios. Okay, so I want to remind the scenario which is related to using the Bacpac. Let's, for example, think about a situation that you have several tens of development teams. And each of those teams usually work on a different part of the application. Each team needs a different part of the database, meaning different tables. So what are the options that we have related to create a copy of the database that fit for each team? Option 1, it's the more simple option that you will find in the forums probably, is create a separate Bacpac file for each team. We are not going over the theory of Bacpac file, but when you create the Bacpac file, you can configure which tables are going in and which are not. This means that if you have 2 teams, 3 teams, that's okay. It's not important. You will create few Bacpac files. But what if you have 20 teams or 10,000? If you are working in a big company or you have a lot of clients that you need to provide them a Bacpac file, then option 1 is very problematic. And in this case, you can simply create a single Bacpac file, provide this Bacpac file to all the developers, and each developer can choose to edit the Bacpac file and remove the entities which he does not need, or he can simply use what he needs. So this takes us to the next scenario. This is a common question that we have in the forum. I saw it in the MSDN in the last month, about 3 times. And the question is, okay, we already got a Bacpac file, but we need to restore only 1 table. What is the solution to do it? And the solution is very simple. All that we need to do is to create the table manually using query, and then we can extract the BCP file from the Bacpac file, and we can import it directly. So we can create 1 or 2 tables directly from the Bacpac file. A small tweak. I don't know why, but I haven't noticed this week. No one talked about it, no blog, no post. But do you know that we can convert a Bacpac file to DAC file? You know, because now you saw the lecture. Those are basically the same packages, only different name. So you can do it, and this means that you can take a Bacpac file and use it in order to manage versioning. So this small tip. The next tip that I want to give is that we can use BCP, the BCP files from the Bacpac package in order to import data to existing tables. I'm not talking now about the option to restore a specific table, but think about a situation when someone deletes some rows and you want to check what was changed. So what you can do is simply use the Bacpac file in order to check all the rows that were during the time that we created the Bacpac. So in some cases, this is very useful. The last tip in this slide, it's related to the zip option, the compress and uncompress. This is something that can really help you. I told you not to use the Windows zip tool. Instead, what I recommend that you will use is an application that's called 7-zip. Using 7-zip, we can compress the file to a smaller size than the default compression in the original file. We can gain about 10 to 20% smaller file. Now 20% smaller file mean that we gain a lot if we need to pass the file between different environments using the network. The 20% of 10 hours can be 2 hours that you save and 2 hours of traffic. More than this, even if you do not need to edit a Bacpac file, my tip to you, you can uncompress it and recompress it using 7-zip to gain those 10 to 20% of the size. This means that if you need to pass the file, you will get better performance. Some tips to improve errors, to prevent, sorry, we don't want to improve errors, we want to prevent errors. So remember those, especially if you get errors. When you create a Bacpac file, make sure that there is no write activities at the same time on the database. I already mentioned that Bacpac file is created step by step. It is not transactional consistently. Second, make sure that you use the same version or newer version for the tool that you use for the import as the tool that you use to create the Bacpac file. This is very important because the format of the internal of the Bacpac file changed during the time. Next, we can edit the Bacpac file. This is a tip that I already spoke a lot in this session, and this way we can prevent errors. When creating a file, execute entities which are not exclude entities which are not supported during the creation of the file. This is supported even if you are using the GUI of the SSMS. You can select which entities, which tables will be included in the Bacpac file and which will not. Another important tip, especially when you are using on-premises database and move them to the Azure, is that you can configure the database as contained database authentication. And if all this did not help, you can always use SSIS for the task. SSIS does not have such issues. Okay, wrapping up what we have done today. First of all, I want to emphasize that most of what I spoke today is undocumented. Actually, most of what I spoke, it is documented, but there was a big part of the session which is undocumented. You always need to check it on a development environment before you do it in a public production. Anything that you do is always on your own responsibility. And with this, we can summarize what I showed you today. So I explained what Bacpac file is and how it is created or used by the external tools using queries which are executed step by step. We show the power of using the Bacpac in order to create a copy of the database in different environments. I mentioned in a nutshell the difference between Bacpac file and a backup file. We examined the internals of the Bacpac file, which we found out that this is a simple zip file. And I showed you that DACpac has exactly the same structure as the Bacpac. The big differences between DAC and BAC is that DACpac includes the information about schema and versioning. The package includes only the XML files. Bacpac includes the information about both schema and the data using XML files and the BCP files which have the information of the data. I hope that you find this session interesting. More important to me is that you understand that this is not only theoretical session about internals. I love to speak and to learn about the internals because understanding the internals is only a tools to get better performance and better practical solution. So I hope that you understand the practical of what we spoke in this session. Before we close the meeting, I would like to thank everyone who contribute to the event. I want to thank the organizer of the event and ask you all to scan the code in those QR. Please take a few minutes you have before the next session and provide your feedback. It's very important. You can also contact me on Facebook. You have my Facebook page, Facebook profile here. You can send me your feedback and comments about the meeting. It's very important because comments can help me improve myself for the next lecture. But above all, I want to thank you all that came and participating in my session. I wish you all a great day and stay safe. We are exactly on time. It is now 10 minutes before the round of the hour. So bye-bye.